Hello, folks. Once again, you're welcome. My name is John Kayode Abusi, and like I said, my job sits at the intersection of software and product security, engineering, and architecture. And in this episode of video I want to make in this series of AWS security services, I want to talk about a service that I classify under security services, and that service is called AWS Resource Manager. Simply and securely share your AWS resources across multiple accounts. In my previous video, I've talked about AWS organization, and I've talked about, and you know what I mean? It means that you can have multiple AWS accounts, segmented or distributed across OUs and stuff like that. But now I want to talk about how we can share resources across those accounts. In this video series, I follow a particular semantics, and it's like the first thing I look at the general overview and the core capability of that service. And the second level is I look at the business problem that particular service solved in terms of security engineering architecture. And the third, layer is how do we productionalize it? How do we deploy this into production? What are those things I need to consider, needs to be considered and stuff like that? So the first thing I want us to look at here is what are the core capability of what we call Resource Access Manager. It's all about sharing infrastructure or resource pooling across multiple AWS accounts. Now, the first thing I want us to look at is centralized provisioning with multi-account consumption. Now, this capability, it's telling you that this particular service allows you to provision a particular resource within AWS environment and share it across other AWS accounts. The second thing is decouple the resource ownership and tenant execution. Now, this kind of allows you to separate who provision these some resources and who can consume it. And the consumers, what are those things they can do with it? Can they modify or not? So it allows you to have that kind of level of isolation and that level of control over some resources. Then the third capability is granular control plane permission. Like I said, the policies implement granular control over shared resources using RAM managed permission. It gives you more granular control over permissions as to how they get propagated to downstreams. Then the other thing is zero friction organization auto provisioning. Now, seamless multi-account scaling by natively integrating with AWS organization. When you enable resource sharing with AWS organization, resource share targeted an entire organizational unit. That shows that if I share a particular resource manager, with another OU, organizational unit, every account or anything within that organization is inherently inherit those particular resource and they can work on it. Now, native console integration. This is another capability. It allows the consumer to see shared resources as if they are local to them. It's not as if maybe, yes, they are not, they don't have control or maybe full control over it, but it allows them to see it as if it's local to them. Now, how is this security, how does this work or maybe fit into our security workflow? Because, for instance, if you, it's fitting because it allows you to have some security measures, controls, from maybe security account that can be shared across other accounts. So, what does it do? Like business problem is of capital inefficiency and idle capacity. Now, when you optimize, this kind of allows you to optimize your cloud spending. That shows that, for instance, NAT gateway, VPC can be shared, created in one, account and be shared across multiple accounts. That shows you don't have to pay, for resources across multiple accounts. So for that redundancy, mesh network complexity and cross-account cider exhaustion. Now, this has to do with you when you have multiple accounts that you want to share resources across. Sometimes we do what we call VPC peering and some other mesh, network to make sure that resources are shared across. But this kind of bring you a clean core opportunity to do some clean core, provision in one place, shared across multiple accounts, manage it from one single pane of glass, and you keep on. So these are the business problems that this particular service solved. Then it is that governance drift and distributed policy, non-compliance and stuff like that. Now, this is more or less like GRC problem. Like for instance, your environment can spiral out of governance, out of control, in such a way that you have multiple accounts and you don't know how to propagate your governance, your controls, across these accounts. It means that things might be going on in some account that you don't have control over. But in the case of in this case, you don't have to what? You don't have to bothered about that. You can control from single point of view. Let me read something to you here. Minimize security compliance drift by centralizing core asset like AWS network firewall policies and Route 53 resolver rules inside a master security account and distributing them via RAM. Security teams guarantee that every account in the organization enforces identical compliance perimeter filtering rules that cannot be tampered with. That is how it is. It ensures it allow or help security team to ensure that when control is put in place, it can be propagated to other account, and that compliance will be very easy. Extended time to market hurdle. When you have to provision, you have to control, you have to do across multiple accounts, that kind of slowly your onboarding down or your MVP, go to market down. So one of the things that it does is to eliminate that friction and give you that get to market in time capability. Then when we talk about production best practices, it's more or less like what are those things we need to do when we want to enable this in production? What are those things we need to care about? We care about. So it's enable organizational level trust to bypass invitation handshake. In most solutions, always activate the enable sharing with AWS organization feature in your AWS RAM. So when you enable this, I'm going to link a hands-on video that will show most of these things. So when you enable that particular parameters or functionalities, it allows you to bypass the handshaking every time. This is one-time configuration, and boom, you are ready to go. So now architect a centralized infrastructure hub. So now this is another thing you have to talk about. You have to consider in production environment or production best practices. Establish a dedicated network or infrastructure account within your AWS environment. It's not just like like mesh. No. It's hub and spoke. So it allows you to have a dedicated account that allows you to configure, govern, and control. You understand? The way other account should behave, and that is a good thing when it comes to GRC. Implement strict list privileges via custom RAM, manage permissions. So these kind of allow you to review your permission scope, like from single point is again permission scope. Okay. So and that helps you to have that control. Prevent over allocation, of quotas and stuff like that. So this allows you to align properly the way you want to provision, the quotas you want to give, and some executions you want your workflow to do. And that is another thing you benefit, when you follow the best practices in production. Now enforce centralized governance monitoring with AWS CloudTrail and AWS config. So this also allows you to, this work with CloudTrail and AWS config, and it gives you those capability and those benefits that come with those tooling. So this integration helps. So I hope this helps you. And when it comes to resource sharing using RAM in AWS, I'm going to do a deep dive hands-on using Terraform and some other toolings to make sure that we have something that we can get our hands dirty with and provide something we can follow follow through. Thank you.